Well, I'm not anywhere cold. I'm in California. I got to admit to the rest of you who are suffering in Texas and all over the country in this cold storm called Uri. Isn't that a good name for a storm? It's got a terrible effect. It's killed a couple of dozen people. Very tragic story last night of a mom and a child who attempted to heat themselves in a car and died from carbon monoxide poisoning. And I am reminded of stories like that over all the years when I was up in New England and in Ohio. That always seems to be something that people need to be reminded of. So we extend our thoughts and prayers to all of you who are suffering, and many of you are. And to those of you who are mildly discomforted, welcome to our world growing up in Ohio. 1-800-520-1234. Now, yesterday, our phones were frozen. I actually appealed for calls on the question of Ted Lasso and whether or not anyone had watched Ted Lasso in this audience, because only Adam among the Hugh Hewitt team had watched Ted Lasso, and it turned out that no one called, which is a bit of a suspicion since our lines are almost always full. So we're checking them out again this morning, 1-800-520-1234 if you've watched Ted Lasso. But better yet, if you've watched Ted Lasso and Big Sky, I would like you to call. Because I informed you yesterday that Big Sky was not, in fact, about Joe Pickett, but was a fact about the highway. And the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt lasted 10 minutes and I lasted 12, because The Highway is the scariest book I've ever read. And I don't need to see the miniseries about the highway. David Kelly produced and C.J. Box executive producer, no matter how many millions of you watch it. So I am hoping that my audience is exactly what I think it is, and that you are Ted Lasso watchers and not Big Sky watchers. But hopefully you're watchers of both, and you can tell me that Ted Lasso, like I suspect, is actually the thing you need in your life. I also got a second terrible surprise yesterday before I do the news of the day and the rundown, and it's this, if you're watching on YouTube. No phones are ringing, are they? 1-800-520-1234. Not even the drunks in Long Beach. People are just coming home. They're not even calling. The people are just walking into the bar in Hawaii aren't calling. So we know, we have a screener. We have two screeners, in fact, because usually if I say the lines are open, the first couple of people who can lurch to the phone in their beery gaze and call me about their girlfriend are the first people we hear from in the morning. But we'll see. I hold in my hand the sound effect. Do you know what this is, Dwayne?
Looks like Rummy Cub.
That's it. This was sent to me yesterday, and I treat it like I treat every other package that is sent to me with no markings on it. Could be dangerous.
Did you soak it in water?
I don't know what to do with this. The note comes along with a recommendation that it is indeed everything I've been told, and it's addictive and wonderful and terrific. Have you played it?
I think, yeah, when I was like 8.
Well, I've never heard of it before.
Oh, it's a game.
Well, yeah, it's not a bomb.
It's a real game.
Well, after Big Sky, a truck is not a truck, is it? Huh?
I don't know how that follows.
There you go.
Counselor.
That's why I'm here and you're there. David in Tennessee. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Hugh. How you doing?
I'm great.
Yeah, I was just calling. My wife and I actually binge watched Ted Lasso this past weekend.
You did too. That's what the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I did. And your report?
I got to say, that's usually more my style of comedy, but my wife was the one who insisted we watch it. I was skeptical, but it was A+. Give it an
A+. And why is that?
I played soccer growing up, and so I had the soccer love at heart. But just the comedy, I got to say, the female comedy throughout it was pretty amazing. It was just great casting. Just loved it. Hilarious.
And uplifting, right? Inspiring.
It was.
It
made you want to go to work and have a positive attitude, for sure.
That's exactly. And I don't know anything from soccer. I'm like Ted. I know less about soccer than Ted does. But well said, David. Thank you. Robert in Grand Junction. Hey, Robert. Oh, Robert went away. Ben, he was not. Okay, I'm sorry. We didn't mean that, Robert. Let me run through the rundown while we're waiting here for Ben to catch up with it. We've got a Republican schism. All right, President Trump has never let an attack since I followed him, which is since 2015, so it's been 6 years now, has never not answered an attack. And Mitch McConnell took the bark off of him at the end of the impeachment acquittal. And so yesterday, President Trump fired off a scathing 2-page letter. Understand that the leader, who is the leader of the Republican Party in power right now, he's the most powerful Republican in America, and he's going to win the Senate back, is defending himself and Congress, and he's not going to be removed by the caucus. The caucus know he's the best leader that the Republicans have had in my lifetime, and is a wise, wise guy. And Donald Trump has not lost his grip on a majority of the party base. And so this is like a clash of the titans. You know, it's Godzilla versus, or it's Predator versus Alien, right? And I'm not going to tell you which one is which. But for those of you who are worrying, let me just give you some names. Eisenhower and Taft. Ike and Nixon versus Joe McCarthy. Ford versus Reagan. Reagan versus Bush. McCain versus Romney. Huckabee versus Romney. All this stuff that people are pronouncing the end of the world because two big Republican names are fighting with each other, forget it. It just means you don't know anything about modern politics. And if you have been sheep dip in modern politics like I have, and I've been in the game since 74. My first campaign was 74 when Paul Cronin got wiped out in the Watergate baby election, congressman from Massachusetts, and there's never not been a cycle that I didn't know about every race and everything that mattered. This is nothing, as they say in Wag the Dog. In fact, the original great feud among conservatives was when Bobby Peel split the British Conservative Party in 1832 over the Corn Laws. So I go way back in Conservative Party splits. And here is the book that I talked about with Andrew Roberts last week, Salisbury. And he and Disraeli, in 1867, when the conservative minority ministry in England fell apart, they could have killed each other walking on the street. Although Salisbury, then Cecil, Robert Cecil, before he was elevated to the House of Lords, he just thought that Disraeli was a lying, cheating, backstabbing, absolutely not to be trusted everything. And then they were best friends and pals throughout the Disraeli triumphal ministry. And then Salisbury went on to be Prime Minister of Great Britain for 3 terms. Point being, when making up is the difference between getting back into power and not getting back into power, politicians make up. Also came across just a great apropos of nothing. This is nothing. This is nothing. And we have a lot of Democrats who pretend to be journalists writing it up like it's the end of the Republican Party. This is nothing. But while I was preparing a column for the Post 2 weeks ago, I was rereading Salisbury. And I marked down, just read to people this. In 1875, there is war in the Balkans, which actually you could use any date for war in the Balkans. And Disraeli sends his best friend this note. Foreign affairs are in an unintelligible condition. Serbia's senseless rashness is as mysterious as Turkey's vitality. Turkey, a despotism without a despot, is governed absolutely by a set of officials who have no title to their places except that they were appointed by the man they murdered, is fighting a very costly war without money and without credit, and is maintaining with success a desperate struggle for national existence without the aid of a single man of conspicuous ability, against the hatred of more than half of her subjects and against the growing ill will of the great part of Europe. I shall begin soon to believe in the Hindu legend that the elephant which bore the world stood on the tortoise, and that the tortoise stood on nothing in particular. Now, when you figured that out, what he says and its applicability, you can come back and listen to the Hugh Hewitt Show.